Hello everyone.
Hola.
Welcome to another week, another blessed week that we have been given by God to
Y'all, we made it.
share um, our story with you. We come to you each and every week, every Sunday we drop, and so continuing in our series of the fruit of it all this season, we are back with another video, another banger here, and we continue to glorify God's name. This is the
Amen.
podcast of the fruit of it all, and this week's episode is the introduction. So let's get it in. Start off by telling the people who
My
you are
name,
and what your name is. Yes.
if y'all ain't heard it the first or the second week, it is Katie. Hello. I am born and raised in the Bahamas. Um, I've been here 10 years now. A very wild 10 years has it been. Uh, but by the grace of God, we still here and still making it. I I guess the second piece that I'd probably walk into is my age and occupation. So I'm 25 and I work as a registrar at a university here in Florida. Um, that's all I got for right now. You take it from here. You got to give them the same information I gave you.
So this week's episode is the introduction, and the introduction is explaining who we are and explaining some background information of where we came from and what has led us to do what we're doing.
Not you giving an introduction to the introductions.
So the introduction of what I need you to do is come on, like let's give
Oh
people
my
more
god.
than
Okay,
that.
okay, okay. I was giving them basic. Okay, let's start off with basic.
This is
It's
a 30
peeling an
minute
onion
show.
here.
This is not a
But
hour long episode. This is 30 minutes we give them
peeling
every week.
onions.
People want
Okay,
to get right to it. What's up?
okay. So I guess my journey started well before I was even born. Um, but I guess we can start at the time I was born. I was born with a hole in my heart. I had two open heart surgeries, a catheterization. So three surgeries in total. Basically, anybody who's under the medical field would know what tetralogy of Fallot is. But the first time they did it when I was 3 months old. And when I tell y'all God works, even when you're not coherent to know, when I was 3 months old, my mom tells the story to me all the time. They were IMB negative blood type, which 2% of the world has. They were going to give me to B positive. They were going to give me B positive, and my mom caught it at the last second. And that was a testament to God. But not only that, when I had the surgery, my parents have the videos, so they can even reference this. Um, the doctor said that I didn't recognize my mom. They said that by the time that I can't remember exactly what she said, but basically that my brain wasn't functioning as it should. And my mom felt so overwhelmed, felt so emotional. And in that moment, she says, I smiled at her. At 3 months old, I smiled directly at her. And she said, it was just a level of peace that came over her that was unexplainable. And she was like, you can't tell me that my daughter doesn't know who I am. And so they prayed um, because when they found out I had open heart surgery, my heart sounded like an ocean. And it's so interesting because when doctors would listen to it, it just sounded like waves. And I think that that was God's promise because in the Bahamas we don't have medical, not to knock it, but the hospitals are not like here. And from that moment on, I guess you could say that started my journey. But I was so young. I've been raised in the church. I've always known the church. I've always known that God did a miracle in my life. But it wasn't until my second open heart surgery that it hit different. And it's the second time they didn't have enough blood. And when they took me into surgery, took me out, they found an extra pint. And over 100 people had given, and only one person really came back as a match. And they needed more. And They had the surgery, and the surgery didn't go as planned. Um, my lungs collapsed. My lung collapsed. I had to kind of gear back up into walking again. I couldn't walk probably 20 steps without feeling exhausted. Hooked up to an oxygen, stayed in the hospital for 2 weeks. On the 10th day, it was my first day walking outside. And I remember it because I couldn't sneeze, cough, burp, or any regular function without feeling complete and utter pain. And I remember walking outside and I was able to smell the flower, like flowers for the first time in 10 days. And I looked up and I was like, thank God. Because I'm in an ICU with children who are 8 months old, who are babies and have gone through 5 surgeries before they even know how to walk. And that, I think these moments, the hardest and toughest time, mind you, 6 months earlier, I lost my grandmother, and 6 months after, I lost my other one. Those were the hardest moments of my life, but those were the moments I trusted God the most. And those were little miracles that God was planting in my heart to get me to be where I am, to remind me that I have no choice but to trust Him. I have no, there's nothing in me that can keep me here or has me here sitting in front of you now. And through that, I am reminded that God chose me. And so I sit here, and I guess my introduction, that would be an intro to me, or as small as I could compress it, um, that God is faithful and God is real. And I am here as a walking, breathing testimony to that. But I am also here as an ambassador for Christ like never before, because I've seen what He can do when you think you are at your lowest. I've experienced what it feels like to have your heart physically broken, but figuratively broken too. And I must tell you that I smile because of God, I love because of God, and every waking moment is literally because I shouldn't be here, but because of the God that I serve. And that's, I guess you can say, a little bit about me.
Tell people how the fruit of it all, and the fruit, and God's way, how He planted fruit in you from the beginning,
Oof.
and how He's allowed you to kind of flourish like a tree.
I promise you, you don't want to make this 30 minutes. I think you want to make each of our pieces 30 minutes, but um, my grandmother's first and foremost. My parents, absolutely. Please don't get my parents and my godparents. My god parents are pastors, and so they were praying. My parents are. My dad was a deacon in a church. My mom always went to church. We all, it just was church, church, church. Um, but the it all of my life, I had a car accident on top of that. All of that, it all planted resilience, planted patience, planted a desire to just do God's will. Paul speaks of where if he was thrown in jail, he's good. If he dies for the cross, he's good. I'm not all the way there yet, but I'm a lot further to that point than I can honestly say I've ever been. And I kind of have a faith that I didn't think I would ever reach. You kind of have no choice but to believe in God when you've seen Him in so many different examples. You have no choice but to believe that God has to be working, because there's nothing that you would have done to do otherwise. So I think asking that question and even trying to answer it is nearly impossible, because the only explanation and the fruit is literally, let His will be done. I can't remotely say, because even as I sit here, I see fruit that I didn't even know was there.
Right. And how would you say God has changed your life?
Y'all, listen. And to the people who know me, who will probably listen to this, anybody who knows me knows that I can hold my liquor. And God made a dramatic shift this year where He said, cut off liquor. So I just cold turkey stopped drinking literally in the span of 2 hours. I was drinking. I heard revelation. This is what I want you to give up and go on a fast. The fast was supposed to be 40 days. It's gone into 90 to 120 days. And I don't have any taste to go back. Number two, I prayed to God dramatically for me to stay in a season of fast. I must say, I've stayed in a period of fasting probably for the last 8, 9 months. Um, he started it off with no bread, no pasta, no rice, no chocolate, no sweets. It's developed into where I was off social media for a while. No liquor, no candy, no chocolates. Um, Lots of water. And he even switched the fast up and told me for a period of 40 days to go to the gym every day or work out every day. So I did 40 days of working out. He said, fasting isn't even only just removing what takes your attention away from me, but maybe adding in something that could still, be beneficial in a spiritual, physical way. So I added in that. And I just, I feel different. It's like my spirit doesn't become unsettled by any and everything. It's like things at work that possibly used to make me go a, like I used to go off the hinges. It doesn't unsettle me. It's like it is what it is, because regardless of who my boss is, I know who my God is. And so my posture has shifted. My heart posture has changed. My mind has changed. My mindset is different. I i i really can honestly say that God has stepped me more into the woman that He wanted me to be, with the purpose that He wanted to give me. Now come on, now you ain't asking me all these questions and you ain't.
This is your introduction of people getting
No,
to know who you are and how God has influenced your life.
I need
So,
you.
how you mentioned that God has influenced your life through basically changing the way that you were going about doing things and the way that you were carrying yourself and your character and your posture of how you were moving throughout life. You mentioned that God has been an impact in your life through just getting you to where you are today in terms of the surgeries that you've had to endure and come through, and also the car accident that you were in. So, you also mentioned that you were in, your whole family has been in church, and they've raised you obviously to live a Christian life. um,
Church life.
Church life. Talk about pitfalls that you have gone through that has steered you away from God, and how maybe you thought that you would never get back to a place that a good place and back into God's presence.
um Life,
Because
period.
life has so many ups and downs in it, and we're not always, unfortunately, in God's presence all the time. And so obviously the fruit of it all is God plants this fruit in our spirits, and it always somehow leads us back to Him even when we go astray. So talk about the times that you have gone astray, and how God has led you back to Him, um, through that fruit that He's planted
Oh,
in.
I guess it would
Because you
be.
wasn't always a holy Christian girl.
Y'all listen.
So obviously you can't sit up here
uh,
and deny the fact that
oh no, listen.
you
Jesus knows.
hadn't had a whole past. I'm
Um,
not asking you to get into the past. I'm just asking you to explain how what in that
Many
brought you
things.
back to God.
Um, I think, and I guess I can't explain this, but I'm praying the Holy Spirit explains it for me. But um, when you've grown up to know that you're different. I grew up around more older adults. So my nature was that of a more mature, even from younger. So it was like I didn't have the same pursuits as people my age. Not only that, but I also was a very submissive, go with what other people desired me to go after. And I think that played an important role because I never stood up for what I desired, or more or less what God desired for me. And so, just in constant person, they say, "Oh my gosh, you should be in a relationship," and I think relationships took a toll. It seeing from young age how so many of my friends would get in and out of relationships, although it was unhealthy, it still was a very big desire in any young female's heart. On top of that, just circle of friends and having that social media friendly. And I think social media played a very big role, which is why I take fasts from it regularly. But then I realized that God is the fulfillment. I think that when I got to a point where I started going to church more regularly, probably about 5, 6 years ago, I ended up going to church more often. I decided to get baptized, and I started working at the church, and I started taking care of the kids. And in taking care of the kids, you see the love of Jesus in a different way. Kids are so innocent, so pure, and they love on you, like they love on you. Kids don't know let too much sometimes. And at 2 years old, that was the room I was in. Um, they don't really know conflict. They know somebody's mad or upset, but they would just hug you. And it was like a lot disappeared. And it really, I think that was the moment I really understood what it said to have a childlike faith. It's an innocence and it's a purity, and it's just a joyous faith. There's nothing attached to it. There is nothing where we have to barter it. It's literally just purely and unimaginably beautiful. And in that moment of taking care of kids, you know a different type of love, even if they're not yours. So through that, it was kind of like God was showing me love through a little kid, and in receiving love from babies. And so I think that redefined me, in a sense of redefined what I considered religion and a relationship with Christ. I began to have a relationship. My parents kept me in church, and I credit that, but having a relationship with Christ is active. And I did not know what that activity, I thought going to church was that activity. But when I really realized that it has nothing to do with the building, but everything to do with your heart, it shifted my entire perspective. So it was like I found love. I knew what it was like to be in love, because we always talk about it from a relationship standpoint. You can love a person and you can be in love with a person. But through the love of those kids, I can honestly say I knew what it was like to be in love with God and in love with Jesus. And it just propelled me to want more of it. And when you want more of it, you just, it's like that burning desire. And after a while, and I prayed prayers in those moments like, God, don't ever let me lose this fire. And so it's kind of like in this moment, the fruit and that burning desire to have a closer relationship with Christ is because of the prayers I prayed in the small little moments that I didn't even know would get answered. And now I'm living in it. It's such a spectacular feeling. And I can't say, I must say that was probably the most mind shifting and heart changing moment that really propelled me closer to God and brought me back. And from there, he was just dropping it and just dropping it. He was like, I got you. I'm here for you. I love you. And no matter the direction that you may steer off, I still want you. I still want your heart. I still have a purpose for you, a purpose in me, not a purpose you're seeking for yourself. And through it all, here I am doing the same thing. Heck, this is something anybody who knows me, and I don't even think you know this, I am terrified of public speaking. I have avoided doing anything with my business because God called me to speak, and I said, I'm not doing it. I hate it. It scares the mess out of me, y'all. I am freaking out inside right now, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. But I've got into a position where I value obedience over my desires. And as uncomfortable as it is, I said, God, if I told you I want you to grow me, here we are being uncomfortable.
So that was a great introduction to, a little bit of Tibet in your life and taking us through some things that you've gone through and how that's brought you out on the other side. So, I'm appreciative of you sharing that information and sharing it with the fans and the viewers of being able to understand where it all comes from you, where the fruit has been planted within inside of you that you're now able to kind of not only be obedient but also to share your message to the world. So thank you for that, and thank you for giving us a true insight on to what fuels you on the inside, and that's all the things that you've gone through, all the things that God has got you through to this young age. You're still very
I feel
very
old. My
young,
knees don't work the same, y'all.
still very young, and you still have a lot of you know um, more life by the grace of God
By the
who
grace of God.
continues to give you life, will you be able to experience more and be more obedient. So this introduction is literally an introduction, a starting point, because you're not even in the second half of your life just yet.
Wow. It feels like the second half.
You know what I mean? So um kudos to you to finding God at such an early age. Kudos to your parents for introducing you to God, because you had
Kudos to
a
my parents.
you had a jump start in kind of understanding what that fruit is on the inside and how to utilize that, and
Mm-hmm.
how it's transformed you and it's continuing to
Show itself day
yeah,
by
and
day.
and
And
how it's blossoming in each and every day for you.
mm-hmm.
And so God knew what he was doing when he
He
obviously
did.
created you and
He,
and have you went through all of the things that you've gone through, is to continue to show God the glory,
yes.
and continue to keep him in your heart and continue to um see that fruit and know that that fruit is it came from him, and it's embarking you into bigger things in your life. So
Amen.
um
Time to switch gears.
now that the fans and now that everyone has had an insight into your introduction,
Now it's my
um
turn to take over all the interview and all of the questions, and you just get to answer. We get
dun, dun,
inside. There it is, the
dun.
drum roll, where we get insight into the Christian way.
Well, yeah, I mean, so my name, believe it or not, is actually Christian Way.
We love it.
And it took a long, long journey for me to get here. I'm not the typical Christian. I've had a lot of ups and downs along the way, but um, there is something bigger that God has for me, that He keeps tugging at me and keeps
Boy,
pulling
he
at me
yanking you.
back to His presence, because sort of like pretty much every young child, I always had the dream of wanting to be successful, and wanting to be in the music industry, and wanting to be in driving fancy cars, big houses,
The
in the
Mercedes,
limelight.
the
And
Rolls.
what we see on social media today, that's what drove me.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing about it is that I got to that level, behind every successful person, there is a person that is driving that person.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was me,
Mm-hmm.
driving people to success. And so I witnessed it, I was involved in it, I lived it, and it never made me happy. I was always wanting to be the one that was in the front, and I always thought that if I was the person in the front, then that would complete me, that would make me happy. And then once I noticed what everyone was had to endure, once everyone had to go through, that kind of made me take a step back and say, is that something that I want for me? And if it is so, then how would I want it to evolve? How would I want it to be? And so it started off for me. Obviously, My parents raised me in the church, so I had a upbringing of going to church regularly and hearing the music and having the preacher touch my heart with the words that they would speak on. But like any child, we don't really listen to what the preacher is preaching
No, we
at
don't.
such a young age. We're there because our friends, our moms, all this there. Half the time we're tired. Half the time was
Mm-hmm.
on our phones or
Sleep.
whatever we were doing, or with girls or friends or stuff
Yes.
like that, or playing around. So I always had um, a love for being in church. I just loved being in church and love getting dressed up and love seeing my friends and love seeing the people and just love being in that space and in that setting. It was always something about being in the sanctuary, and that I guess that is where the initial inception of wanting to be in front of a large scale audience stemmed from. Because being in that sanctuary, and I've been in the sanctuary where it was packed, I've been in the sanctuary where I was in front of the entire congregation, I've been in the sanctuary where it was empty and
Mm,
just me. And for some reason, there's just this level, or not level, but there's just this energy that
mm,
you get when you're in a concert hall, an empty concert hall, or a sanctuary, or a large performing platform.
mhm,
And some people like you or others would run away from that.
mm,
That just spoke to me and spoke to me in volumes. And so, like a lot of people who came up or who was raised in the church, celebrities who sung in the church, the Whitney Houstons, the Fantasias, the Monicas, you know um they eventually left the church,
they
and
did.
they eventually went singing R&B music or something that they felt could break through. And so that's what I did too. I left the church and I went, producing R&B records, started producing hip hop artists, was DJing, at different clubs, and um, I got into a whole habit of drinking and drugs and women, and always trying to search for something that to fill that void, something to fill that itch, something to
Mhm,
fill what I was feeling, what was missing. And I went to school, and I felt like school just made it worse because it put me in a position to now be on my own
mhm,
and now take all of those things to the extreme.
mhm.
Now I'm staying out later. Now I have friends and crowds that's around me that is influencing me
Utmost
to
freedom.
do more and go beyond. Now I'm putting friends around me who has the same mindset of, you know,
Drink, party, and
drink
do all of
party,
that.
wanting to be successful in the recording studios, which is where I spend a lot majority of my time doing craziness. And it led to friends, advising me to go this way, go that way, go this way, and I did. What I will say to push the story along is that God had me go through all of those situations. God had me realize that all of those situations was not going to fulfill my purpose and was
Mhm,
not going to fulfill my happiness that I needed to have or my peace. And so
mhm,
he got me into a place where I was all alone. And I think that is when God really, really speaks to us, when we are alone. A lot of times people get caught up and, they get sent to jail, or they get, sent to detention, or wherever you are alone. And that's when he really gets to speak to us,
mhm,
because now there's no crowds,
mhm,
there's no temptations, it's
mhm.
just you and
It's
God.
just you and God.
And so for 6 months, it was just him speaking to me, him once again just tugging away at my strings, at my peace, at my joy, just voiding it and shutting it up. Nothing, when I mean nothing, could break through in terms of making me happy.
Mhm.
Like I would be happy for a minute, a day, a couple of hours. Once all the friends left, once the drugs wears off, once the alcohol is, out of my system, I continue feeling the same way.
Mhm.
And I'll never forget it. I woke up one morning and I prayed, and God just said, "Listen, I think, and I'm calling you to go back to school." And I'm like,
Mhm.
"Go back to school? Like I don't think that's for me." Mind you, for a long time, I was trying to figure out what my purpose was. Like, what am I going to do? I went to school to be a lawyer, completed that. I went back to school to be a music producer, finished that, and still felt unaccomplished. Still felt like,
Mhm.
all right, now I have all of these titles, but I still have no direction, and I still have no feeling of joy. So he said to me, theology. And for a person who, like me, coming from the things that I was doing,
Mhm.
theology, there's no way you're telling me theology. How do
Mm.
I even begin that? How do I even start that? How do
Mm.
I even get into that? And, the moment that he said to me, just trust me, I'll take care of everything for you. You don't got to worry. Just trust me. I said, okay, you know what? I've tried everything else. It didn't work. What's not to trust in this moment?
Mhm.
So I applied, and the school wanted me to get a recommendation. They wanted me to have someone refer me into the program,
Mhm.
and so I found out that they were having a revival upstate by my house where when I lived upstate New York, and I went to the revival, and I found out that the president of the school was going to be at the revival.
Mm.
I drove up there. It was a Saturday. I drove all the way up there. I sat down. I listened to the revival. I watched everyone preach, everyone sing, and then at the end of the revival, when everyone was leaving to go back to their car, I followed the man. And I never told you this story. I followed the man, and I tapped him on the shoulder. I said, "Hey," I said to him, "I'm trying to get into your school. And this is who I am. This is what I've come from doing.
Mhm.
This is where I want to go. And God has led me here to you to ask you for an opportunity." And he said to me, "Contact my office on Monday morning. The rest is
Mm.
done." And when I tell you, after he said that to me,
Mm.
when I
Whew.
gave God the glory after that
You
point,
have
because it's
to.
just like he told me to go do this, and he told me, "I got you." And here it is,
He got you. He is a man of his
unfounding
word.
that he is doing everything that he said that he would do.
He is a man of his word.
I submitted the application and I got accepted.
Mm.
I went to the school, and it was the best experience that I could ever have, because not only was I around like-minded people who wanted to serve God and wanted to learn more about God and wanted to be more in his presence and wanted to give him glory. um, it always had me in a spirit of wanting to um, do what God asked me to do. But of course, like the devil who continues to work out here and continues to fight
Influence
and
us.
influence and has a hand in our lives, and if we're not focused on God, he will destroy us, destroy us, destroy
Or
us,
he'll make it where we destroy ourselves.
or we destroy ourselves. For some reason, he lured me back into the club, back into chasing women, back into um, feeling like, okay, well, you can have both. Why not? You can still be in the club and you can still enjoy your time.
Mm.
Just it's just not going to be, you know, um, on Sabbath, but you can go on a Sunday. You can go on a Monday night.
Mm.
You can go. They're having an open mic night. You can go and still pursue both. Why not? And
Mm.
Went back, got back into the club, and started drinking heavy. And one night, leaving from the club, I got held at gunpoint. Two guys with the mask on basically, came to me. I was completely drunk. I was passed out in my car, and I drove my friend to his house, and I woke up and there was two armed men in front of me, basically telling me to give me everything, give them my car, give them my wallet, give them my money, and I'm sitting there like this is not like
This can't be
this
real.
can't be happening right
This,
now. This
this,
is this
this.
is as I'm staring down a barrel, y'all. As I'm staring at down a barrel, and so to push forward that story, um, there's
You
gonna
did
be
give them,
yeah. So I was robbed, and I was robbed at gunpoint, but
and they left you alone,
they
and
left me obviously.
you were injured or nothing.
I was not injured. They did not shoot me. I did not, die in that moment because the Lord still had something for me. But it was a lesson that He was teaching me, which was, there's consequences to everything in life.
Oh Lord.
There's going to be consequences for the actions that we're doing. Don't think that you're
Mhm.
walking in this world and you're doing,
Mhm.
whatever you please. You will have to answer to someone
You
for the
will.
sins that you commit. And so that could have been the end of my life for me, where I obviously disobeyed God. I went away from what He was asking me to do. But because God had mercy on me, and because God knew that I was being tempted by the devil, He showed the devil that it's not his time yet. I still have say in this man's life. I still have say in,
Mhm.
what I want him to become. And you're not gonna win. You're not gonna win. And that led me to get more and more and more closer to God. It let me really understand that the purpose in this world is to always have God's protection. And the way that I was able to have God protection is by turning my life back over to Him and say, listen, I don't want to be out of your will. I don't want to be in a place where I'm disobeying you because my life could be cut short. And my life should have been cut short. But once again, the same way that God has sent His Son to save us all, He spared me in that moment because He knew that there was a bigger plan for me. And so, I'll obviously get more in depth into my story and all the things that has gotten me to this point. But the things that has gotten me to this point is all of the interactions that I've had with people who have strangers who have come to me and said, listen, your purpose and what God has led you to do and want you to do is to use your voice, to use your platform in a way that you know you can speak to people and you can guide people with your voice and do what you're saying, so people are aware that, one, there is a God, and two, that we have to be obedient to what His will and what He tells
Amen
us to
to
do.
that.
This the wages of sin is death,
Mhm.
and we should have died
Long
10
time
times,
ago.
10 times over.
Man. So what do you think all of those moments, what do you think you can say, if anything, that is the one thing that you can say kept bringing you back?
The love of God, that the love that God has for me runs so deep that He kept tugging and tugging and tugging and tugging and tugging
Mm-hmm.
to tell me, come back to me, come back to your Father. And it reminds me of the story of the prodigal son, where he left, went to go do his own thing, thought he was going to be a big king,
Mm.
and got out there and realized it ain't all what it
Peaches and
says
cream
it's
out
going to
there.
be. You know what I mean? And so we end up having to find our way back.
Mm-hmm.
And the goodness of me finding my way
Ooh.
back was that the door was wide
Oh,
open for me. You
man.
know what I mean? The door of His salvation never left. The door of his love flowing for me never ended. he was able to say, listen, even though you went out to do your own thing, I was still there. I was still watching you. I was still
He's
looking over
faithful.
you. I was still trying to tell you to come back home, but
You had to go through this. Um,
so for me is knowing that God's love runs so deep that he was able to allow me to go out and do foolishness and go searching for other things, but to end up realizing that there's only one God.
mm.
And that God is the God that I serve today.
Well, people, I don't think you could have asked for a better introduction to the Christian way. Um, and I think that it is beautiful because you're not perfect. You've
Right.
been through life, you understand what it's like to be out there. And I believe that it's a testament to relatability because for us to speak to people who are still out there, we got to know what it's like. We got to be able to relate. We got to talk to them. We could say, we did it. And if we are as messed up as we are, ain't no excuse for anybody else.
No.
Because with God, that nothing is impossible. And I believe that it's a testament to beyond just the anointing on your life, the calling on your life. Because it's not to say that God doesn't pursue us all, because he truthfully does. But at some point, sometimes, I feel as though God kind of eases up a little bit, but he needed you. He needed your heart. It was no letting up. It was no saying, okay, maybe come back. He needed you. It's a requirement. He did not want you to leave. Whenever your time comes, he did not want you to leave this earth without knowing who he is in your life and not him. He needed that positioning
Right.
in your heart because he knew how valuable the purpose that's inside of you. Because if we think about it, the devil comes to steal our joy, still our happiness, still our peace. In your case, still your attention, still your focus. He comes to kill your purpose. And he comes to absolutely destroy you and your relationship with God.
Right.
And
Excuse me. And that's
so
exactly what he tried to do,
he did.
and he thought that he was going to ultimately win by
But the beauty of
forcing my
God,
hand. But the beauty of God, and not to speak over you, but the beauty of God is the fact that God is in control of everything.
but beyond that, God chose Job to take the battle and told the devil, hey, why don't you test Job? Because he was so confident and he had so much faith that Job wouldn't falter that he told the devil go try Job. He took down the fences and the hedges of protection he had around God, around Job, and said, go at him and see what's up.
But at the same time, he also had to ask God for permission to even,
And
you know,
sometimes you don't even realize, but the devil already asked God for permission and he's already entrusted you because he knows your heart.
right,
He knew you were committed to him prior to you even feeling like you were committed to him. When you didn't think you were committed to him, your heart was.
right,
And so, guys, I think you've kind of gotten an idea of how we got here through all this beautiful story time. But I believe that knowing who we are will allow you to understand that God works in everybody.
yeah,
God is working in everyone because it's not just past tense. He is currently still manifesting in our lives as is. Like today is no different. We've gotten gems from God that are so beautiful that have even gotten us to this point to sit and do this podcast today and things that have kind of we're using to really bounce off the podcast. So I will say God is faithful. If you can catch anything from what we've both said, we shouldn't be here. We had every other way to go opportunity. We could have been in a hospital, we could have been in a grave. But the goodness and the faithfulness of God, his loving kindness that we don't deserve, has kept us here. And that is the fruit of it all. to be in a closer, more intimate relationship as a result of his faithfulness, not ours. We've messed up, we've walked away from God, and he still chased both of us down. So, as you think about what we said and as you ponder upon it and just kind of let it meditate in your spirit and you reflect on your own story, whatever your introduction would be, and reflect on how God's faithfulness, he's pursued your heart, he's pursued your mind, he's kept you when he didn't have to. I don't think we realize that none of what God does is a requirement. It's a gift.
Mm.
It is a gift. So I pray that you know, just like the presence is a gift, so is his presence. Because it's not a requirement that he's with us. It's really honestly our honor, our pleasure that we get to serve a magnificent God like
Amen.
him.
Thank you for joining us on another week of the Fruit of It All podcast. This was the introduction to both of our lives and our journeys thus far. Um, every Sunday is a new episode. You can email us at the fruit of it all ministries at gmail.com if you have any questions, if you want to explore this further, if you need someone to speak to, you
Prayer,
can,
anything.
you know, hit the like button, please, and
Comments,
comment, subscribe.
subscribe,
Definitely,
check out the Instagram.
we have a lot of more things, excuse me, on the way and that we're planning. God is moving this entire thing for us.
It's not us,
And so it's what you see and what you hear is comes from God. It comes from
all
the
from
Holy
him.
Spirit that is evoking us to speak the way that we are speaking. So if you like what you hear, continue to just, like I said, subscribe and stay tuned. We have more things on the way, and we are thrilled that you even joined and watched this long.
Definitely.
So, once again, keep it locked right here to the Food of It All podcast. Thank you.